All right. Hi, everybody. So this is the auditory drill, and this is part two, ideas and tips. All right. So the first thing is that, as I kind of mentioned in part one, as the students go through a sequence and they're taught new concepts, the graphemes often increase. For each of the phonemes. So, for example, for the long E and the long A, there are 7 graphemes that they'll eventually know. And again, you're only holding them accountable for the ones that you've explicitly taught. Right? You wouldn't have a kindergartner writing like all of the long A sounds, but it's nice to be able to keep track of this because as a teacher with several groups and a lot of kids, it's hard to keep track of everything. So here's a couple of ways you can do that. One is you can eliminate a sound symbol correspondence list. You might circle the things that you're working on. Here, this one says group 2. Another way, you could have a paper copy. This was an example from a student that I had. So you can see for example, with the long E, he'd learned 3 different graphemes that match that. And you can see I was tallying on the side too to kind of keep track of how often I had gone over that particular phoneme grapheme connection in our auditory drill. And you'll notice too that for some of the areas, let's see, like here. So a B, we were practicing that B says B frequently because that was one he was struggling with. So it's it's nice to have a paper record so you can kind of see what you've done. There's also versions like this. And this is actually a great one to give to the kids. So let's say you have a 3rd or 4th grader. They can actually fill out for each of these different sounds what graphemes they've learned. It's a nice way to keep everything organized. There's also some nice resources such as sound walls that the students can use as a reference as well. And I'll talk about that later, probably in another video. All right, so here's another thing that happens sometimes. The students do not always want to say the complete script. So I know what they frequently want to do, like let's say I say, and they say, instead of saying anything, they actually just write it down. Like they don't want to say anything at all. And they just want to go straight to the product. And our kids often, they're not thinking about the process. It's the product. They just want to get whatever it is out and like be done with it. And I don't know why, but many of the kids who struggle with reading, with decoding and encoding, it often is not instinctive for them, I guess, to say it. So this is one area I often circle this to remind them, like, I need you to actually say that out loud. You're going to need to say the sound and the letter, like the whole script. So one tip I have for you is while you're training the kids, because you do have to kind of train them how to do this, don't even give them something to make the letter on. Don't even do that. Just practice just the script by itself. Say, what says, M says, Like just practice that a few times so that they're not thinking they immediately have to write the letter down. And that will, just help solidify that piece. What else? Got that one. Okay, as the students advance in the sequence, you're going to want to take out letters. You saw, for example, in my page here, for my auditory drill, again, I call it, but what says I only have 10 spaces. So, you're not doing the entire alphabet. You're not doing every sound, that we have in our English language. Like you're really targeting the ones that they need to practice. So for example, the ones they have made errors on, or the ones that you've just recently taught. So if you're trying to review a recently taught concept, you need to include those as well. But again, it's unnecessary to go through like every phoneme. It's not even possible. So don't try. You want to really be intentional about the phonemes that you're choosing. Let's see. However, having said that, you do always want to keep looping in the vowels, and this is because they are the most difficult. So you always want to have vowels embedded in there. You're never really taking those completely away. All right, what else is there? Oh, okay. So for early learners, I don't always have them form the letter. So if you have some, like a kindergartner who they're still working on letter formation, or someone who struggles with fine motor skills, or it's difficult for them to retrieve the shape of the letter even if they know what it is, there are other things that you can use. So instead of making a letter, they're actually identifying a letter. So making the letter would be an expressive experience, whereas finding a letter is receptive. Okay, so I'll give you an example here. I would say my kindergartners, say what says M says and they would trace it. Right, so they're not having to make it separately. That's right there. Say what says A says Okay. Tracing. All right, so there are different kinds of alphabet arcs, and again, I have these. I can share them with everybody. So there are these that are lowercase, and I hope I already said this, but if I didn't, we're working on lowercase letters almost always, because that is what the students will primarily be experiencing through their decoding or encoding. There's also some uppercase versions, because occasionally you might have students, even older students. I've had fifth graders, even a sixth grader who had difficulty remembering the B and the D in the uppercase letter. And it's tough because, again, we're seeing mostly lowercase letters when we read, and when we're writing, we're using lowercase letters. So sometimes it slips through the cracks what those uppercase letters actually look like. So every now and then, maybe once every few weeks, I might put in an alphabet arc with uppercase letters, or ask them to write the uppercase and the lowercase, just to make sure that they're really solid on these, because it's difficult and for the kids once they're, say, in middle school and they actually don't know some of their uppercase letters. So we can do that. Another way, instead of having them write the letter, is with magnetic letters. So here's the set. Also, the Wilson Foundation magnetic letters are great. So that I would highly recommend that as well. So you would do the same thing. You would say, aw, what says aw? O says aw. And they would take it and put it on the side. And you would maybe just have like a little pile. Say v, what says v? V says v. So you would take that off. And then I would either go in reverse and have them put them back, or have them do that for them, by themselves. So they might say, O says aw, put it back. V says v, put it back. That kind of thing, depending on how much time I have. All right, so that's another way that you can have them, identify the grapheme, especially with the younger kids, instead of having to actually form those letters. I think that's pretty much it for part 2. So thank you for sticking